So should we get straight into it then with a short film about killing, which is in Polish, Drew?
Oh,
did you know? Just one of your ones, right?
Krótki film o zabijaniu.
Good. Yes. Now, and I believe you haven't either, Drew. I think, as I said, we've not seen Decalogue, which is the series of short films based on the Ten Commandments. That these have been this and a short film about love, which we'll get onto, which have been extended to about 20 minutes or so to make this film. So, but even having read a little bit about them, not so sure I was expecting the title to be quite so literal in the description, to the point that the killing in question so dominates the rest of the proceedings that there's almost no point in relating them. But I have never let the pointlessness of my actions stop me in the past, so here goes. Jan Tizar's Waldemar Rybowski is a taxi driver in Warsaw, and he's a bit of a tool. Not as much as Miroslav Baka's Jacek Lazar, however. Waldemar is lecherous and self-interested, but Jacek seems happy to cause minor acts of destruction and violence. Ultimately, their fates will become intertwined. Briefly, when Jacek hires Waldemar's cab for a trip to a secluded field and brutally murders him in unflinching detail. He does not get away with this, however, and he soon finds himself in court, represented by Krzysztof Kieślowski's Peter Balak, an idealistic, newly minted lawyer stridently opposed to the death penalty in general, and in particular to the one that's just been handed down to Jacek. From then, we move to looking at the crimes of madness, or perhaps as a result of unresolved childhood issues that Jacek relates to Peter, to the state-sanctioned killing that's doled out in prison as Jacek is taken away and hanged. Hanged.
Meat is hung, people are hanged.
But aren't people meat? Soylent Green is meat. So, 2 killings for the price of 1. Don't say that Kieślowski doesn't provide value for money. So, yes, it's about killing in a way that I suppose shortcuts a lot of the quibbles I could raise about the relative absence of narrative or indeed relatable characters. It's not primarily interested in trying to paint a portrait of or create a deep understanding into the mind of a killer, which does, I think, rather undercut itself when it makes a half-hearted attempt at doing so later on in the film. Also, on the not sure why they bothered side of things lies our lawyer, apparently a large part of the film's expansion from the 1 hour TV origins, and an agreeable enough fellow, but one who is not really of any interest or utility outside of some tirades against the death penalty. So while killing is clearly coming from an anti-death penalty standpoint, to its credit, it's not being overly prescriptive and forcing you into drawing a moral equivalence between the acts of murder, once state-sanctioned, on display here, even if it's not going out of its way to present any kind of opposing viewpoints, which is fine. It's not claiming to be a documentary. It's shot in a deliberately ugly way, all brutalist locations and murky filters and extraordinary vignetting, giving the film a dark tone to match the subject matter. It's odd writing this in space year 2019 in Britain and thinking about how this would have been received at the time in Poland, where strident debates and soon law changing on this issue was happening, or indeed how this is received today in any of the less civilised nations where the death penalty is still enacted. The death penalty has, for us, the highly occasional right-wing nutter aside, not been something we've had to think about in Britain for as long as I've been old enough to know what the death penalty is, really. So this does feel a little bit less socially relevant to me. But that's a luxury others may not have, and if you're in one of those locations, then this still has some powerful observations at its core. Given that it's more of a social studies essay than a film, it seems almost right to judge it as a film. Suffice to say, it's hardly entertaining in any sort of traditional fun sense of the term, but as filmmaking, it's fairly solid work. Drew, what do you make of that one then?
I really enjoyed this. I didn't know what to expect from it. As I had a vague idea of it going in, but not much more than that, and I had deliberately kept it that way. Beyond that, somehow I had read more than one place that this is credited with having a big effect on the Polish authorities.
If it did, it happened very quickly if you look at the timelines.
Yes, I was thinking, that I'm going to file under... well, let's try and find a more palatable word, because you may find me swaggly. I don't want to keep us to a minimum. Yes, nonsense, let's call that.
Yes. Let's give it a citation required tag, shall we?
Yes, it is absolutely, quite clearly, again, from the timeline you say, Scott, quite clearly not the case. And also, there was nothing in the film to support that anyway.
Yeah.
However, I did find it quite compelling, although part of my feeling at the end was one of frustration. Again, partly from, or possibly from, that idea that there seemed to be some idea held of this film that had some actual impact on policy in Poland, which I don't believe, but because it doesn't really show, it's not really an anti-capital punishment film, because it's kind of frustrating. And this is the fruit of my frustration. The film tells you it is, but it isn't. Because there's a scene near the end where the prosecutors, the judge, Piotr, the lawyer, the defence lawyer, speaks to the judge, and the judge says, basically, in all my time, that's the most eloquent anti-death penalty summation I've ever heard.
Yeah, we didn't get to hear.
That we don't get to hear it. That would have been powerful. You know, a nice bit of writing from Krzysztof Kieślowski, who's wrote all of the films where he's written pretty much everything that Kieślowski's worked on. Krzysztof Kieślowski. If he'd written some great polemic in this that the lawyer got to deliver, that might have been quite compelling and probably would mean for an entertaining scene. It's like, no, they just pretend it happened and they mention it. That's cheating and frustrating. What it does do, though, is sort of, it shows quite well. No, does it? I think it shows quite well how somebody might respond when they're about to be executed, but at the same time, well, I'm not quite sure I would imagine it would be any different. And it shows the guards, a large number of them grab him, take him into the execution chamber because he might try to run away, but that kind of seems obvious. People generally don't want to die. Mm-hmm. I don't know, it's weird. The more I'm thinking about this, the less I think I liked it, because I'm not convinced it had an awful lot to say. And while I'm watching it, I'm thinking that this Jacek, the murderer, he's a bit of a prat at the beginning, and he seems to have killed for such a stupid reason.
Yeah.
And I'd have liked an explanation of why he did that. And I mean, I guess he shows some remorse, but it feels like more fear. The more I think about it, I'm not sure this film has an awful lot to say.
There is a bit of a recurring theme in pretty much everything I'm going to say, is that the films themselves, I, for the most part, enjoyed on some level for all of them, but I didn't really get a lot of the kind of... Whenever I read something, it was about this theme in particular or that one in particular. It's like I didn't get much more than a very surface treatment of a lot of this stuff. Now, I would have said probably that Killing is the one where I did get the most of it, because there's quibbles with it. Like you say, I thought it wasn't going to bother trying to make any kind of case for the killer's redemption or anything, and then it kind of makes a half-hearted stab at it later on. But I thought that the point of this was to show you, okay, well, here's a killing that was done in the heat of craziness or passion, whatever it is, and obviously it's bad, we can all agree on that one, but here's a state-sanctioned killing. It's every bit as unpleasant and brutal and dehumanising as other killings are, and shouldn't really be a thing that we should be doing to other people either. And I thought, I can kind of see where it's coming from in that regard, but in terms of anything that is being put in front of you, it's certainly not doing that. And other than killing is bad, I'm not 100% sure it's giving me a lot more detail than that. It's certainly not a film, while it says it's about killing, it doesn't show you any kind of viewpoint into the people that are actually doing killing. It's not trying to understand why people kill, it's just showing you people being killed, which is, again, descriptive, can't fault it for its title, but whether you get a lot more of that and whether you really need to be convinced that state-sanctioned executions are a bad thing is perhaps perhaps it's talking to the wrong crowd. I mean, we're, as I say, because in Britain it's been a settled question for so long. It's something it's preaching to a choir in that regard.
Yeah, but it's just not a thing in Western Europe, and it hasn't been for a long time.
Yeah. Whether that would have been different, say, at the time when this came out, where it was still might have been happening in some Western European countries. It would have been on the tail end if it wasn't gone completely, but it certainly would still have been fresher in the minds of people than it is now.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, it's weird. It shows that scene of... Well, there are a couple of scenes in the execution chamber. One's the execution himself, like checking everything's prepared and making sure it works, and then the actual execution itself. And it's not even like there's criticism there and that the people are indifferent or anything like that. It's just to show that these people are professionals doing an unpleasant job and it just has to be done. And that in itself can't possibly be the indictment of capital punishment, because those people don't have a choice. I mean, the one strange thing was that there was the person dressed as a doctor, and that struck me as odd, because people who signed up with Hippocratic Oath have no business being in a death chamber.
Yes.
But he may not actually be a doctor. I know you were talking about uncivilized places still have the death penalty, so, for instance, the United States, yes. Where there are no doctors that go into those places. Generally, even doctors that are administering it, because that's absolutely verboten. Do no harm, number one. But they may always be dressed in that way.
Yeah.
So whether that's a doctor or not, that's the only thing there that makes me think this is wrong. Otherwise, they're professionals doing their job. They don't have any choice about that being their job, probably. And also, you want that to be like a well-oiled machine, both figuratively and literally. You don't want people suffering. And if you know anything about capital punishment, it's horrendous. Because electrocution is torture. Lethal injection is possibly one of the most unpleasant ways anybody could possibly die. So it's a really good episode on last week tonight with John Oliver a couple of weeks ago about lethal injection, which is really worth checking out. It's on YouTube. You should look at it if you're interested in this subject. There's not any great ways to do this. Hanging, actually perhaps one of the better ones. And then while Pierpont himself, the last British hangman, the executioner chief, whatever his actual title was, sort of equivocated a couple of times during his life whether he believed in capital punishment or not. He was a professional who made sure that people didn't suffer any more than they had to. He's carried out the sentence. He's not there to punish people, and that he doesn't have the right to make people suffer or anything. He's a job to do. So you want those people being professional, taking care so that it happens as quickly and as well as such a thing possibly can. So that scene in itself can't possibly be an indictment, because it goes well. The man goes in, he dies by the order of the court, and it's swift. And as much as it can be, he doesn't suffer. So not beyond what that inherently entails. So I'm not really sure where its stand is. I mean, and I don't need to be convinced. While there are some crimes that perhaps could be argued that merit death, I still don't think that killing people is the correct way to tell people that killing people is wrong. So I'm already converted. This film is, I think if it had that speech I mentioned, it would have been more compelling. It's like, we've got this Jacek. He's not a very pleasant guy, but he's young and stupid, which itself probably shouldn't carry a death penalty, because lots of people are young and stupid. Unfortunately, somebody else dies because of his stupidity. Because I think there's a kind of a callousness to his character, but there isn't necessarily malice. So I read it anyway.
I might have agreed you up until the point he strangles someone.
Yeah, well, up until the point that he staves his head in with a stone. Yes. Maybe, yes. So yeah, maybe walk that back a little bit. I mean, it does focus on the brutality of the killing, which I thought was a hugely affecting scene, because so many films will show that killing is quick and easy. Yeah. Kieślowski here takes pains to show that no, you don't just kill a human being easily. Valdemar is struggling. He doesn't die immediately. He doesn't die with 3 different methods that Jacek tries with him. It's brutal and it's ugly and it's a real struggle. And that is an affecting scene. So actually, yeah, I completely walk back that. Yeah, there's real malice there because he keeps going through with this. But it's sort of the counterpoint to that, the state sanction thing, it doesn't sell anything. It's like, this is the state's law, right? These people have no choice but to do this, and the judge presumably had no choice but to impose a death sentence, because that was probably a mandatory sentence once he was found guilty of murder.
That defence didn't work at Nuremberg, and it's not going to work for you now.
So yes, I don't see whether the counterpoint to this is that state sanctioned execution is somehow just as bad as murder. I've not seen many films about capital punishment. And while it is a ridiculous and highly contrived film, at least in life of David yeah, I know it's not good. That's you worried I was going to say that.
Yes.
It's so contrived and stupid, but and how it goes about showing that it's one of the arguments against capital punishment is convicting the wrong person, which quite clearly no, in this case isn't the case. In this case isn't the case. That was a well-constructed sentence. In this film, it isn't the case. At least that film sort of shows, like, here's an argument against it, because even if it's contrived as to how the wrong person was executed, because it's a dumb film. Actually, no. Do you know what? Go and just cut out all the bits about the life of David Gale. It's probably a better idea, because it's a terrible film. I've just not thought about it in years, and I'm now remembering how bad a film it is.
Yes.
Yeah, this film doesn't present a compelling portrait of the argument against state-sanctioned execution. I mean, I already feel it, but this film isn't selling it to me. That makes sense?
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. It's worth watching, but it kind of falls apart the more I think about it, because it doesn't sell its main point.
Yeah, I think we certainly spent a lot longer talking about the morality of the issues it raises than it itself does in this. So, and that is perhaps the point.
It probably isn't, but let's blame it as an argument.
Yes.